done, but so much of more to be done. So it goes with the phrase like थोड़ा है थोड़े की ज़रूरत है, ज़िंदगी फिर भी यहाँ खूबसूरत है. And especially with Trump doing so much other things out in their country, and many of our Indians are joining back. I think we also need to gear up and also put up a brave foot forward as a Viksit Bharat. So in this context, Radhaji, I know Niti Aayog is doing great work. We have experienced, you have had a great tenure at the Niti Aayog, focusing aspirational blocks, aspirational districts. But we would like you to elaborate a bit on what is this initiative and how India is going to become a Viksit Bharat maybe.
My co-panelists for joining. I totally understand it's so tough to start after a good lunch, and so we'll begin with a few stories so to get started, so as not to sound too boring. Generally people associate if you're government you must be definitely boring, so just to break a few myths. So what exactly is this aspirational district program and aspirational blocks? Essentially are the bottom of the pyramid, the most backward districts and blocks in the country, which essentially means what exactly does the India that we don't know does, and how do you make it better if you really want to make a change in India all about. So interestingly, these 500 blocks cut across 350 districts of the country, which is half the country. There is huge areas of backwardness, and there you see so much of skill gap and the capacity to even the products that they have made to bring them to a stage where they can occupy markets. So as part of that whole mission, which is actually Honorable Prime Minister's vision that it is led by, it was very interesting to see, and as we talk along the way, we'll talk about what really has happened and how do you think this could make a difference with the kind of fantastic initiatives that are being taken today.
So if we see there is still too much of diversity, too much of youth around, unemployment. I mean, we are promoting startups and we are promoting entrepreneurship, vocational training and multiple other things. So Bhavna, would you like to focus on this? Where do you come from, a small town, Vrindavan? Banaras.
Banaras.
You come from Banaras, and maybe you have seen how is a other side of the country as well, which is not Mumbai, which is not Delhi, which is not Kolkata. So there are these ABCD towns which are very on the growing path. I also come from a very small town called Mahu in Madhya Pradesh, and I always used to say that the aspirations of the people who are in a small town are always different. They are totally different. So since you have seen both the worlds, how do you see Viksit Bharat growing ahead with so much of youth around? And maybe your thought process of philosophy and how because you talk a lot about dharma and other things also.
Thank you for having me here. I'm sitting here with Megha ji, a pioneer in the work of textiles and artisanal work. I'm sitting with a bureaucrat who pays attention to the GDP aspect of Viksit Bharat, a status we intend to achieve by 2047, when we are a century old, as a nation, not as a civilization. I would like to focus on another aspect which actually has been made popular by Bhutan, which is GNH, Gross National Happiness. It is something that is applicable to both small towns and urban India as well as the villages. In terms of GNH, what are the goalposts, the signposts that we can achieve by the time we are a Viksit Bharat in 2047? I would call it the 3 R's, RRR, the happiness hacks. And the happiness hacks for me are roots, relationships and responsibilities. In terms of roots, I would like to focus on culture and faith. Culture is the things the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the music we listen to, our festivals, our celebrations. I focus on what Megha does, the clothes we wear. If we do a little bit of a thought experiment and extrapolate to 2047, are we still likely to wear largely Indian clothes? Saris, salwar kameezes, dhotis and kurta pajamas for men. I would hazard a guess and say probably yes. Jeans and coats and ties, wonderful as they are, they're not climatically suitable for us. They give us rashes, for one. They're not environmentally friendly. Economically, carbon footprint is increased by buying clothes that are manufactured in China and Vietnam. Can we buy and wear clothes that are manufactured by Indians, Indian artisans, the khadi, the linen, and where? Is it likely that Indian brides will still be wearing saris in 2047? I think yes. In Maharashtra, they'll still be wearing Paithani saris. Faith. Faith, I feel, is an extremely important element in helping us become small and making life and the universe large. In the 19th century, the psychological concept, the philosophical and psychological concept that was very, very rampant was hysteria. In the 20th century, it became stress. In the 21st century, it's narcissism, me and mine. Faith helps us reduce and make small the me part of our life experience. Reduce and sort of move away from the drama of our own lives. Are we still likely to be people of faith and religion and ritual in 2047? I will say yes. The other are relationships. This is where I think there are red flags to what we will be like in 2047. In relationships, I would mention family and friends. Family is the my people in our lives, our own. Families have become, within the space of 3 generations, much smaller, and we move toward nuclear families. From having 4 to 5 siblings, we've gone down to 2 or even 1 children, or quite often no children at all. Social media has added a very interesting dynamic to families. Remember COVID times and those family Zoom calls, the family WhatsApp groups are very interesting. But living in a time of polarization and ideology, there are families in which we don't talk to an uncle whose politics we don't agree with. Conversations among family members have become a landmine, a minefield. I'm going to say something that is a little sensitive. The women's movement. It has been at one end a beautiful thing. I'm sitting with the Additional Chief Secretary of Maharashtra, Megha ji here. The Chief Secretary of Maharashtra is a woman, the DGP of Maharashtra is a woman, both very dear friends of mine. It has been good for us women, and I'm grateful for the changes that it has brought about in our lives, but nothing good happens without consequences. And Dr. Erica Komisar, a psychologist from the US, says that women's rights have thrown child rights under the bus. An explosive statement, something that we need to seriously think about and examine. In an age where I was talking, to Shishirji, a moment back, that 14% of adolescents in the world today are dealing with serious mental health issues, and children have to be paid attention to. Friends. One would imagine that in 2047 we would be better off in the era of friendships, but friendships today are about useful friends, Facebook friends and useful friends. What we call networking. Dr. Arthur Brooks, a Harvard professor, talks about the useless friends in our life. The best friendships are those that we struck when we were children, in school and in college. He says, do you have enough useless friends in your life? That's what's going to enhance your life experience and be a very powerful growth pillar, I would imagine, in 2047 as well. The third, responsibilities, the third R. In this, I would talk about civic consciousness and, in the professional era. I was in Jaipur the other day, sitting in an auditorium. It was the celebration of the birth centenary of a very eminent Rajasthani person. And there was a couple sitting in the auditorium with a 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old was incessantly crying. A 2-year-old will be a 2-year-old. But can parents be conscious of where they are and the solemnity of the occasion? We've all experienced it, right? In restaurants, in movie halls. बच्चे तो बच्चे हैं, लेकिन बड़े तो बड़े हैं. And how do we conduct ourselves in public places? Do we have a sense of civic consciousness? These things are taught to children by modeling and a reward-punishment approach. Children see and learn. So what are we modeling for our children? In the professional field, discipline, duty, and a little bit of stability. People change jobs so often now. Loyalty is an old-fashioned concept in the professional as well as the personal field. Challenges, I would imagine, and the quality of human content will also seminally determine the quality of what we achieve in the material sense as well as a nation in 2047. Things we might pay some attention to.
Nice, Bhavna. So you put it so well, like all the 3 R's. But if I see, I've been teaching in one of the colleges and I see the younger generation. So the other day one child came to my house and I was told that this generation, that small child is beta now. So I heard for the first time that the smaller one is beta, her mother is Gen Z and her father was millennium, and I don't know which generation I belong to. So there are so many characteristics that beta are these and Gen Zs are these and millennium child and all that. So so new things are happening and ChatGPT and AI is giving actually a new life to everybody. But Radha-ji, you and me come from that background where we have traveled rural India. We know what is Bharat and what is India. I mean, where we see these 100 lights out here, people wait for 100 days to get 2 lights. So there is this whole disparity and void and regional imbalance. But still, we are moving towards the Viksit Bharat. There was a time when we say that we wanted Mumbai to become a Shanghai. But we are still yet struggling with the waste management, yet struggling with the footpaths, the encroachment, and I mean, there is a huge challenge as well. But yes, we think that there is a scope, and that's why we inspire others. I think that could be the journey. So how do you take this? What do you tell about this? Because you've been a bureaucrat, seen all sides of disparity very well.
In fact, I thought it was very interesting what you said about how will 2047 be. I'll just take the point, will we be wearing the same saris? I thought that was an interesting way to put it. I recently, like all women who go, when you go to a new place, you say, what are the saris of that place? I went to Tirupati, so I went to Venkatagiri. And there were these beautiful saris. And while buying, I asked, is your next generation also into it? They said, not at all. Because they don't find it useful. And this could be the last generation of saris they're making, which are made, which obviously is such a heritage of the country, which will be lost. Yes, we may be wearing saris, but they could be Chinese made, because they generally definitely pick up on whatever is good and selling. So will we be able to keep our cultural heritage and move ahead is the real question. I mean, we may have most of the things that we're talking about, but it would be truly Indian, or is it going to be something else? Now, I have traveled length and breadth while being in Delhi's postings, and you see the extreme poverty in spite of the richness in which they live. Because there's so much talent, skill, so much artisanal value, but there is something that prevents them from logging into the market, which is India and the world. But I would like to take a point of hope when I say this. There are three big things which are happening right in front of us, and perhaps all of us are aware and yet not aware. And I think the three big things that will transform it if we use it well. One, of course, all of us know, which is our GPays and others, which is the UPI payments, which has transformed the way we deal with money and which has brought equivalence. Just to give you an example, if you want to at all get any loan from a bank, you need a CIBIL score, right? But perhaps tomorrow, like Tamil Nadu and other states have done, if a chai wala is selling 100 cups of tea, he may not have a bank account, but he has a digital footprint which shows that he is selling 100 transactions. So the digital footprint will give him a better CIBIL score than anything else. So you are making him empowered without having to have the usual things that mean you are capable or credit worthy that you are. And I think that definitely is one big ticket transformation, which I saw even when I went to US. We were far ahead in terms of the way we deal on digital payments, which is transformative. Second thing, which is equally important but less known about, which is called the ONDC, which is actually an open network, which is a platform equivalent to an Amazon. As all of us who buy on Amazon know, Amazon pushes products, sometimes Amazon's own products. There are a lot of, they're called digital toll keepers. Like you pay toll when you go on a road, you are paying a huge toll to that Amazons or any others that you go on. So ONDC is a very big ticket reform that Government of India has done, which connects the empowerment. If you can speak, a small time a vendor or an artisan can sell to the world without having to pay the huge costs that are involved. And I think this is equally transformative. We actually were trying to tie up many artisan products which are obviously extraordinarily beautiful but small scale, and they cannot come on Amazon. They wouldn't know how to package themselves. So this ONDC platform, which is part of the Ministry of Commerce, now has today, I think there is a news article. In fact, there's a tweet. I just thought I should read out the tweet, which was interesting. Today the ONDC, which is an open network digital commerce, crossed 200 million transactions. So it's not just a bright idea that is being talked about. So this has happened. So people, the kind that you're today talking to, can sell their products to the world without having to do. The third one, which is equally interesting, again perhaps not so popular, it's a government e-marketplace, which is called the GEM, by which you can actually sell to the government. So government is still the largest purchaser of things in many sectors. You can come on that e-marketplace and put your product out in the market and sell it. So I think transformational changes are happening, and India will be uniquely different from others because we think of the poor. We don't think only of the blessed. And I think you were saying something interesting. Mumbai wanted to be Shanghai. Now Mumbai will want to be Mumbai in its own way. And that's what I think is going to be the biggest thing. So I am hopeful to what you say.
Just a last question to both of you. See, in Spain, where they wanted to promote a lot of crafts, and instead of giving any subsidies to the artisans or any other, they came up with a policy that every 18-year-old, once he turns 18, he get a 5,000 rupees, their local currency, euro, and he can buy only handicrafts from that 5,000 rupees. So they focused on the market side. So that if every 18-year-old in India, if we say that we give you 1,000 rupees, just buy a local product from, or maybe there could be some criteria of putting it. So imagine so much of economy can roll out. So do you think there is a point where we need to think differently from the context we come from? We have started from TRISOM and all these other schemes, but should we need to think differently? So maybe, and one more point, I just heard, I have not seen, that in Dubai, every society, every mall, every location, there are 3 bins kept. One is for the waste, fabric waste, other is for the metal waste, and some is for the PET bottles now. So every person in the campus, in the mall, everywhere, they just come out and just dump it in their respective bins, and it is then collected. And we still struggle with the segregation of waste. Even if I want to segregate my waste, the BMC vehicle will come and take it together. So there could be some, maybe policy level 1 or 2 intervention you can suggest, may or may not happen, but maybe as an individual, as a citizen, do you think there are some interventions which can make we can be change makers or milestones into our growth?
Rabindranath Tagore said, "Akla chalo." Indore has done it. Somehow, Indore has made great strides in the area of waste segregation. Actually, if Indore can do it as an Indian city, I suppose the rest of us can also do it. It's a challenge though, and we come back to the point I was making earlier, human content. You were talking about digitization. Modi ji has done seminal work in this area, from income tax to GPay to filing your returns. But having said that, the essential and I'm going to say this, the essential Indian way of being, even when things have been moved online, whether it's GST or filing your your returns, glitches, I am told, are deliberately created so that you can contact a human, bureaucrat, mid-level bureaucrat, and then you go back to our old ways. How do we improve our essential human content and make us move, maybe not shift so much as balance our idea of freedom with responsibilities, our idea of rights with duties. Our constitution, gives us fundamental rights, but Article 51A also spells out our fundamental duties, 11 of them. I talk about 3. Let's just discuss 3. To uphold the sovereignty, integrity and unity of India, to promote harmony and common brotherhood across regions, religions and language. I think, Radhaji, if I remember my fundamental duties, I think that clause also talks about, abjuring derogatory attitude towards women. And the third, which is very topical right now, is to abjure violence and protect public property. So can we, as a family, as parents, as schools, as teachers of kindergarten children, instill fundamental duties and responsibilities, along with the very fashionable and the very righteous sense of our rights and our freedoms.
Thank you. Last thing. Yes. I think coming back to the topic of the day, which is the growth pillars of the country, and the question that you asked, how do you integrate it? How do you make it happen that actually people adopt? One interesting thing, I think all of you have been to Mamalapuram or the Mahabalipuram. When you go and see such a beautiful site, which is so, ancient and other things, you can immediately go there to an artisan village, which is equally beautifully crafted. In fact, I remember going in the middle of the night and it was people sculpting away and selling their produce. So if you know how to put your show of India, which is so glorious in itself and its traditions, if you know how to package it, I think many a time, India falls short. Every time I go abroad and I see that wherever you go to a museum, you cannot get out of it without having to buy a few things, which more or less are pathetic actually. You wonder why how come India, which is so rich in its products, we cross by beautiful places but we are never stopped. Perhaps India needs to relook its tourism policy by saying, while yes, great archaeological sites are great, but can you compulsorily say if you're going to Corbett, there's an equally great site nearby which is doing woodwork, or if you're going to Mamalapuram to a sculpture place or a bronzes, it is very possible. As I said, to To change the culture, you also need to change the design. You can't just talk about good things but not make them available. I think India is in a very interesting location in its journey where it feels a sense of pride but doesn't know how to articulate it. Like, I think all of us here sitting in this room would love to do something for the country, but we don't know how to channelize it. So if we could build these things carefully, you gave the example of this 5,000 rupees as a voucher. Why think so far? I have a colleague officer from KDMC, Municipal Commissioner. We give so many things in government. If we make it a rule that any program that happens, we'll make it plastic free, it is very easy for us to do. We could say that this is plastic free, we'll buy only things which are made by artisans and given. You can imagine, we can suddenly, perhaps push the whole economy in a direction which will help people do it. So I think it's all about changing the culture, the language in which we speak and we think. But I feel still very hopeful. India still thinks with its heart, and that